Welcome to Full of Grace podcast with me, your host, Grace Prosser, where I'll be guiding you on a journey of self-discovery, deeper connection, and a healthier way of living. In these episodes, I will be exploring topics such as self-love, community, sisterhood, faith, relationships, wellness, prayer, and living out your purpose. By discussing these topics with boldness and authenticity, I create a safe space for my listeners to connect, observe, reflect, and apply growth into your life. This podcast offers education, understanding, and practical guidance to help you live an easy flowing life. And no matter where you are in life, remember success and failures do not determine the love you are worthy of receiving. So why not choose to live today by taking the steps freely towards a life full of grace? Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good. It's good to see you. We made it.
We did, finally.
Made it. Yes. Oh, it's good to be in this space. So, let's introduce you to everybody that wants to get to know
Yeah. Yeah. Should I just dive in? Let people know what I'm all about?
Yeah, would love to.
Yeah. So I'm a certified porn addiction recovery coach. I've been working as a coach for the past 5 years or so. I'm also a former geneticist, so I have science in my background, and then also a former Buddhist monk. So I spent some time as a monk in Asia. And I've been a meditation teacher for the past 10 years as well. But really what I'm focusing my energy on these days for the past 5 years or so is really talking about porn and talking about the impact that it has on people. And in part, my own story comes from porn addiction. What got me into meditation and mindfulness was my own addiction to porn and breaking free from that. And so it's something that as you said, we need to shine a bit more light on. So that's what I'm here for.
Woohoo! Amazing. Yeah, I was actually gonna mention, the meditation and being a Buddhist monk. How long did you do that for? That is so interesting. I mean, that's a complete different conversation, but wow.
Yeah, my time as a monastic was very short. So essentially a big part of my practice is going on silent meditation retreats. So there are these things called Vipassana retreats where you go and you don't speak for 10 days or 14 days. There's different kinds of Vipassana retreats. And I was going on a month-long silent retreat. And at this month-long silent retreat, you had the opportunity to ordain as a monk if you wished. And so I decided to ordain just for the month that I was there. But these meditation retreats are really a huge part of my story and something that I've been doing for the past 12 or 13 years or so.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I started to meditate about nearly 9 years ago now, consciously, where I sat down and I was like, right, I'm going to try this thing out. And I also do silent meditation. So I did my first silence, 2 day silence, about a year and a half ago. Took myself out to the countryside and just did a full 2 days. And I must say even the 2 days it changed my life completely. And now I make it a regular thing. I do it in every season. I try to do it, winter, spring, summer, autumn. I try and do 2 days. But I am going to apply to do the 10 days. And it's something that I would like to do at the end of this year. So I'll have to get some information from you as well, like tips. So yeah, that's super interesting. And thank you for being here. Me and Jeremy actually don't know each other, like, at all. We just connected on Instagram. I saw something that you did, and I can't remember where, but I was like, this is amazing. And there is not enough people speaking about this. And also seeing your background of, parts of your story that have come from recovery, I think is so essential for when we're actually giving that medicine out to people. To have lived that experience is the truest form of medicine, right? And you know, that's beautiful to me. So it's something that I like to share with people. I used to be in the sex industry when I was in my early 20s. I didn't do porn, but I was around it. I saw it. I understood what was going on. And my job was classed as soft porn. So, you know, it was being in that realm of, in that industry where I also, you know, kind of got caught up in it, and had to do a lot of healing from it as well, especially around shame and stuff. So I'm delighted to have you because I feel like this is a topic we can help men open up to, and also maybe perhaps women start to understand men on a different level, because I feel like the the way that sometimes women can judge men or shame men around porn can also stop them from actually breaking free from it. So do you want to tell us a little about your story and, like, you know, how it transformed for you?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say I fully agree with you that it's just something that we need more conversation about. And I really don't care if people disagree with me or agree with me. The main thing I want is for people to start having conversations about it. Because it's just the wildest thing that this is one of the most prevalent things in our society, but nobody talks about it because it's so shameful and sensitive. And so we just sweep all of the potential consequences, the potential downsides, potential harms under the rug because nobody wants to talk about it. So if someone's out there listening and they disagree with me or agree with me, I really don't care. What I care is that people, we lose the stigma around talking about it because it's something that, you know, it affects almost everyone. So shame is also a huge topic, you know, when it comes to porn, when it comes to sex in general. It's a thing that is so sensitive and so shameful for both men and women. So I'm glad you brought that in as well. It's something we can talk about. My own story was, you know, rather standard. You know, I got into porn when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. You know, it started very mildly. It started with like the lingerie catalogs coming in the mail, comic book characters that I was attracted to. And then by the time we got internet, it was starting to download photos and videos. And it was very innocuous. But over time, you know, gradually it became a habit that was just day by day. And by the time I got to college, I was watching, you know, at least an hour every night. Some nights would be a couple hours. And what's really interesting for so many men around porn addiction is because they started when they were so young, it's very hard to recognize the effects of it because it's been in their life forever. You know, it's like the water that we swim in. And so we don't really recognize the effects that it's having on us, in particular because many of the side effects of porn are very subtle and they add up over time. So it's not like if you're a drug addict and you can see the effect of, you know, a crazy night out. With porn, it subtly affects your relationships. It subtly affects your mental space, your concentration, your focus, and it affects your happiness, you know, just your overall well-being. Not to mention, you know, the huge thing about how it affects your expectations of intimacy and how you show up in intimate relations. I mean, porn is such a driving influence, particularly if people use it on a daily or semi-daily basis. So for me, there was just a moment in my life where I started to recognize, like, hey, porn is really having consequences. And, you know, to go into this moment, there was this one moment that really changed everything for me. And I was walking down the street. I was maybe early 20s. And I remember seeing these attractive women in front of me walking kind of in the same direction. And I could not help but stare at the asses of the girls in front of me. And I was so consumed by lust in that moment. It just overtook me, you know, and it felt like this big black hole had opened up inside of me. And it was that moment where I realized a couple of things. One, I realized that lust is actually a state of suffering. When there's something you want that you can't have, you're like, I need to have that. Then you're in a state of suffering. You're not in a state of abundance, a state of gratitude, contentment. And this was shocking to me because everything in my life was beautiful and perfect. But in those moments when you're feeling lust, it's like you don't see all the good stuff. You're just ignoring all that, and all you're focused on is what you don't have. And what I realized is I was never going to be happy because I was always focused on sleeping with the next woman, finding someone else to sleep with, having more porn, having more pleasure. And so it was just this kind of existential crisis for me of realizing if I don't do something about this, I'm going to be miserable. And I also saw where I was headed. This was an important part of my recovery is I saw if I didn't make a change, I was going to be some creepy 70-year-old man who was hitting on college girls at bars. Like if I didn't stop watching porn, that was going to be my future. And so that was an important turning point for me.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. That is just beautiful. Just everything you've said. And do you know what? When you've talked about how you watched it and felt into it since you were 8, and just that awareness of it's so subtle. That's so subtle that you don't even realize it's become your life from a child growing up. No wonder so many men and perhaps women now as well are feeling like it's normal almost, because of what it has kind of, I've never actually thought of it that way from the perspective you've just said, like how it creeps in so young. I guess it's like sugar when we're having the sweets as a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like until you actually come off of it, you don't actually realize the impact it's been having on you. And I know for me with porn, I don't watch it now. I would say that when I was depressed, I think when I was quite low, that's when I watched it the most because I needed some escape. I needed some pleasure, like you've just said. I was lusting for something that I thought was missing. And I remember, like you just said, like it got to a point I was like, I don't know if this is actually healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to look into why I am watching it, what I am watching, and how I'm feeling afterwards. And actually, when I started to become aware of it, I realized, wow, like I have been missing out on so much more intimacy and so much more healthy, like sexual experiences. And this is just something that I need to remove out of my life to see if it has an impact. And I did that. And I don't even consider watching it now, because it's allowed me to discover more of who I am as a woman and self-pleasure. It's allowed me to have conversations like this and learn more about men. And it's really helped me heal a lot of my unworthiness and shame, that was driving me towards watching these particular like videos. So it's really amazing that you've expressed to people that this might not be something that's smacking you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
This could be something that's like so subtle, and they're sometimes the most dangerous things, right?
Yeah, I was just talking with a friend on my podcast 2 days ago about there are substances, some addictions where you hit rock bottom, and there are some where you might not experience a rock bottom. It's just kind of trapdoors all the way down until you die, and porn is one of those ones because for many people, there isn't a rock bottom moment. You just keep going deeper and deeper, and one of the things that was really impactful for me was recognizing that I was hardwiring neural pathways of lust and craving in my mind. The neuroscience of addiction was really powerful for me because when you start to understand that what you're doing with your attention, with your focus, where you're, putting your attention, you're actually changing the structure and function of your brain. And I remember this one quote that nailed it for me. It said, neurons that fire together wire together. And so every night that I logged on to porn, which, you know, was every night for 10 to 12 years, I was hardwiring in these neural pathways of craving, of lust, of objectification. And when you realize that, you realize like you are headed down, you know, the wrong path. And one thing, you know, I want to say, it's like my stance on porn, I'm not here to say that it's inherently evil. Like if somebody wants to watch porn and they think that they have a healthy relationship with it and it's ethical porn, I mean, there's a whole conversation around kind of the connection with sex trafficking industry, and, you know, maybe there's rape and all kinds of things on porn websites that are not ethical. But if someone's watching ethical porn and they say they have a healthy relationship, you know, that's their prerogative. But what I'm trying to point out to people is to look at the consequences. As you say, like, how does it affect your intimacy? How does it affect what you're expecting of the other person and how you perceive yourself? You know, so much body image issues and self-worth and all these things, a lot of it's coming from what we're watching on porn.
Yeah. And like you said, from such an early age, you know, of course it's going to have these impacts on us. I often think to myself, I don't know if other women think this, but I, you know, I've moved through not watching porn and through healing around my sexual energy and my body image and what a woman should perfectly look like, you know, through porn. You know, there is that beautiful element of healing through that when you do stop, because you begin to realize, you know, we're not perfect human beings. And I always think to myself, you know, I can see it from a woman's point of view, but gosh, it must be hard from a man's point of view, because if, you know, when you do watch porn, these guys are like, you know, massive, and like that, surely that causes men some kind of emasculation or some kind of unworthiness,
Yeah.
to have to live up to this man that's with all these women on this porn. It's like, that must be hard for a man as well. And I always actually think, you know, have a little bit of compassion for anybody who is, you know, perhaps watching it, or even your boyfriends, because I know plenty of women that shame their boyfriends or get really mad for them watching it. Rightly so, if they're in like something that they need to move through, but also having these conversations, so important for the relationship, because there's always going to be the two ends to it, right? And like you said, you were walking down the street and you noticed the way that you were looking at these women. And that's a really beautiful thing to say, because I know for me as a woman, and I know so many women out there, when we get looked at, there are so many things that go through our mind, you know, and to understand that actually this could be something that is wired in men through porn from when they're 8 years old, is that, oh, okay, so how can I open my perspective to, he might be looking at me, but is that because he's literally been conditioned to look at me like that?
Yeah,
You
it gives
know?
you a lot more compassion for understanding, you know, where people are coming from and what the influences are. And I want to, it's an important point for men to understand there's nothing wrong with being attracted to a woman.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with desire. And this is actually one of the important things in healing from porn addiction, is so many men have this toxic shame relationship with their sexuality, where they're engaged in unhealthy behaviors in porn. And so they associate all of their sexuality as bad or immoral or wrong. And actually an important step is learning how to embrace a healthy sexuality, which includes desire and attraction. But lust is a different thing. Lust is this feeling that porn cultivates, where it's like, I need to have this person, and if I don't have them, I can't be happy. And it's very like object focused. It's very achievement focused. It's like you need to capture them almost. And, you know, one of the interesting studies that I remember hearing about was that when men are watching porn, the brain regions that are lighting up are the brain regions that are associated with viewing objects, not the brain regions associated with viewing people. And so when men are scrolling through Pornhub and watching thumbnails and all these things, what they're doing is they're looking at objects that they want to acquire that can please them in some way. And so, this is, again, it's like once you start to understand what's going on a neurological level, you can't ignore the consequences of this. Like you can say, oh, it's harmless, everybody watches porn, but it has consequences. And again, I'm not going to say it's inherently evil and no one should ever watch it, but if you're ignoring the consequences, that's where you can get into trouble.
Mm. Yeah, that's just so great. That's just blown my hair back. Yeah. We've got to look at the science too, right? As well. That science. And I imagine it would be similar for any women that are kind of watching it. I know more women watch it now, and I know it's become more normalized for women to watch it. But the shame piece you said about not neglecting or rejecting your desires, the most important part, because those desires are something that have caused you the shame. So sometimes we have to lean into it to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if we reject it and abandon it, it's gonna come out in other ways, right? It will lay dormant and come out in these ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are unable to control, maybe then through alcohol or then through drugs or then through all these other ways of being. I remember when I was moving into some of my fantasies and things like that and working around that, I was terrified to admit to myself, oh my gosh, I'm feeling this, but surely not, and surely I don't find that attractive. And then when I stopped pushing it away was the moment it stopped controlling me. It was the moment I was able to be like, oh, actually it's the rejection and the shame I've been given towards it that's actually been driving me mad. So I was able to move through that a little bit. What would you say in relationships? I know this is probably quite a big part of the porn air and the intimacy and things like that. So how would you feel, about sharing something around that? So I know people would love to hear more about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in the topic of relationships, there's obviously so many different case studies and scenarios that we can't go into all of them.
No.
The important thing that I try to get across to people is just self-awareness and communication. So if you're in a relationship, to have a conversation around porn use, what does your partner expect? Because for some people, for some women, watching porn is considered cheating and they don't want their partners to watch porn. Mm-hmm. And there are other partners where they're okay with it. And so first of all, just having a conversation around, is this something that you are okay with? Are you not okay with it? And then even then, it's just noticing the effect of the porn on the relationship yourself. So even if your partner's okay with it, is it something that's improving your relationship or not? And the majority of studies show that for most people, watching porn decreases their relationship satisfaction. And there are so many reasons behind this, the trauma, the betrayal trauma of women thinking that you're, sleeping behind their back or cheating on them, the comparisons. A lot of women feel like if you're watching porn, then you're comparing, their body to what you're seeing on porn. And just your own satisfaction. Again, it's like, just be selfish about this. If you want to be happier, it's like, for most people, getting rid of porn is going to make you a happier person because you're going to have more satisfaction in your relationships, better performance in bed. I mean, we haven't even talked about erectile dysfunction, but a huge causal factor for erectile dysfunction for most people is the porn that they're watching, because it just gets so extreme that they essentially need the extreme versions of what they're seeing in porn to get aroused. And so there are different types of erectile dysfunction. There's delayed ejaculation, where you just can't orgasm because you need that extreme version, or the kind where you just orgasm too quickly. And so both are affected by porn.
Yeah.
So there's just so many reasons now to quit watching it, just for yourself, let alone for the relationship as well.
Yeah, and just trialing it.
Yeah.
Like, what's it gonna be like if I just don't do this for a couple of weeks, right? Like, just try, you
Yeah.
know? How's it gonna go?
Yeah. Because that's the thing. Most men haven't gone, 2 or 3 days without watching porn for most of their life since they were teens. And so if anything, just saying, okay, there's reasons to take on a challenge of like, hey, can I go 30 days? One is if you're curious whether or not you're addicted, then try going 30 days without it. And if you can't go 30 days without it, then it's a pretty good sign that you have, a compulsive relationship with it, that you're using it as a crutch. The second is, you never know what your life is going to be like unless you go, a few months without it, because you need to give your brain time to reset. You need to give your dopamine systems time to reset and to heal. So yeah, for anyone out there listening, try going 30 days or 60 days without watching porn.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is so good. That is so, so good. And just trying it, and perhaps at the beginning, like, yeah, making it a challenge, right? Because, men love a challenge anyway, don't you? You love a challenge. And also it makes it more fun when it's a challenge to see, like, how can this amplify my life without watching it? And maybe for women who are listening to this that are like, damn, I watch porn like all the time. And oh, can I have a challenge now? Even in your relationship, like, should we just try this new thing and not watch it and,
Yeah.
see what happens?
It's interesting because the thing for women as well, it's like the delayed ejaculation and erectile dysfunction for men is a thing that porn can cause, but for women it can cause sexual dysfunction as well. Some women get so accustomed to the extreme version of porn, whatever niche or fetish that they might be into, that when it comes to vanilla sex with their partner, it doesn't work. And so they need, they get addicted or accustomed to that more extreme version. And again, it's not going to be this case for everyone, but it's just to look at your own life. The main thing is self-awareness and honesty with yourself. Like, is this really improving my life, or is it holding me back?
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. The self-awareness and looking at it from that perspective. Absolutely. I know women love to get their journals out. So any women listening, perhaps get your journal out and answer some of those questions. It could be good to open that up and move into, like, a more conscious space of what your relationship is like with porn. And that's very interesting that it affects men in that way, because if I think about it, I can imagine that, because if you are watching porn from like super young, and it's like you're hiding it from your partner maybe, or like you go to the toilet and get your phone out, or there's some quick thing going on and you've got to do it really fast and you've got to ejaculate as soon as you can, it's like, do you get used to that quick fast response, so then when you're actually with your partner, it's like the same things happening, and because you're so used to the porn. And exactly like you've just said with women, like, we get so used to perhaps this extreme. Is interesting. And do you think that that could play a part, like, in terms of doing it fast, and then that's why we can end it fast when we're with someone?
I don't really understand the mechanisms why it causes things like erectile dysfunction or problems in bed. I mean, I think we understand some of it, and especially things like delayed ejaculation, where like a man just can't get it up unless he's watching porn, just because he's getting so accustomed to that hyperstimulation. But whatever the mechanism, it's obvious to see that it's not a natural stimulant. It's not a natural, and this is one thing I talk about, is like, it's not a healthy depiction of intimacy. Like if you are a 10-year-old boy and you start watching porn And for the next 10 years of your life, you're watching porn every night before you even have a sexual encounter. All of the porn on porn websites, like you never see a woman saying no to sex. Right? I mean, think about the consequences of this. Like, in not a single porn video does a woman get propositioned and say, "Hey, I'm not in the mood right now." And so, on a subconscious level, young boys and young girls are learning that girls are always in the mood. Whenever they ask, they need to say yes. You also rarely, maybe in 0.001% would you see a woman kind of saying, "Hey, do this differently," or "I like it when you go in a circle rather than up and down." Like you never see a woman asking for what she wants or telling the man he's to do something slightly different. So again, you are giving a message to young girls that they can't speak up, they can't say they want something different. And you're also giving the message to boys that if a girl does do that, he must be failing in some way. And so we're just creating, these totally messed up versions of intimacy in the minds of not just young boys and girls, but adults as well. Not to mention the key thing here is that porn is an industry. The porn industry makes more money than all of the major sports leagues combined, more than the NBA, the NFL, the MLB combined. And so it's an industry, and it is run off of the most, whatever sells the most, the most extreme things. And so you're not going to see kind of healthy depictions. You're going to see whatever captures the male gaze, the male attention, and hijacks their dopamine system. And so it's this ratcheting system where it just gets more and more extreme, which is why when you go on to, the homepage of Pornhub, 98% of it is violent, aggressive, extreme. It's not kind of like you just kind of modern vanilla sexual encounter with foreplay and afterplay and communication. I mean, there's that whole topic as well. Like there's none of that other stuff. It's just about penetration and sex.
I mean, you've seen me go, oh my gosh. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Like, wow.
And this is crazy because we don't talk about it. I like to think about this. If you were in a company of like 200 people, let's say you worked for some company and there's 200 people, and imagine on one weekend, like all 200 people went on this amazing camping trip together where there was like, this cool concert and everyone's camping together. And then you get back to the office on Monday and nobody mentions it. Nobody talks about it. It's just like it didn't happen almost. And that's kind of the world we're living in, where it's, 80% of people engage with porn on a regular basis, but we never talk about it as if it didn't exist.
80%.
I mean, I just made that up, but it's in the,
Yeah.
it's in the
It's
high.
probably more than that.
Yeah.
In a Western culture, it's probably more than that with someone who has a phone. If you think
Yeah.
about how young it goes and how accessible it is.
And
It's
also just the inherent sexuality of most, of everyone. We're sexual creatures, but particularly of young boys. It's like going through adolescence. It's people are interested in sexual things. When I was young, of course we were interested in that.
Yeah.
And so, but if you get access to modern day pornography on these tube sites, and everyone, as you said, has a phone in their pocket, it's like if you're a Coke addict and everywhere you go, you have Coke in your pocket. And you can do it anywhere you want because and these are, they're called the 3 A's of porn addiction. These 3 things that make porn so highly addictive. So one is the affordability. So porn is free. The other is anonymity, because you can do it without anybody knowing. You don't have to go to a store and buy it. And then the accessibility. You can get it wherever you want because it's on everyone's phone. And so these are known as the 3 A's of porn addiction. They make it highly addictive.
Damn. That's wild. That's absolutely wild. I love this conversation. It's leaning me into even more compassion though. I'm like, wow, like no wonder women don't say what they want in the bedroom. No wonder they're afraid also to say these things in case they're perhaps going to be hurt or the man isn't going to accept the no. And then you've got the men like, why doesn't she want to? Like, because we've been so condition through porn. That was, I mean, I think I've just had a light bulb moment because it's taken me a long time to get my boundaries to a point where I feel comfortable with, even in general conversations in relationships that isn't even to do with sex. Like even general relationship conversations, being a woman and saying, no, this is how I feel, or, you know, please can you do this differently, or help me with this,
Mm-hmm.
or can you help me find a solution to this? Even that feels so uncomfortable for women sometimes. And no wonder men are also feeling uncomfortable on the other side, because if there is this, you know, conditioned response that women are not speaking up through the porn, if we're used to watching porn, then of course that's going to be a communication block
Mm-hmm.
on many
Yeah.
levels, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and it shuts men down because they are so afraid of how, you know, the performance, and then if they do, or if they are with someone who does speak up and says, "Hey, can you do this differently?" You know, again, they feel like a failure or something. And so, of course, not everyone. Like
Not everyone.
there's a spectrum, and
Yeah.
there are many wonderful men out there that
Yeah.
don't have, you know, little egos, and they can hear that and say, "Oh, okay, yeah, let me try this new thing."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but this is, you know, it's also like these are people in relationship. One of the things that's so important to look at is just how porn affects single people as well, and
Mm.
just the amount of craving that it is cultivating in these men, and this like kind of need to have their sexual fix. Um,
Mm.
so it's, yeah, it's, there's a lot of, and again, it's like there's so many different threads we could unpack
Yeah.
on this, but there's so much interesting stuff in these topics.
Yeah. And like perhaps it's causing separation as well. Like if a man is at home watching porn, maybe he is feeling like, well, I can get my fix off porn. And so it's like perhaps even isolating sometimes. The
Hmm.
man won't hit on the girl. It's okay because I can just watch porn tonight and that'll do me fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's creating, you know, generations of men who are getting this cheap fix of dopamine that they think it's giving them the intimacy that they want, but it's not. You know, it's like drinking salt water to quench your thirst. You think it's fulfilling you, but it just makes you thirstier. It makes you
Mm.
more lonely, you know? And so it's,
Mm-hmm.
as you say, it's people think they want to connect with a real person. They want to have intimacy. They want to have a real sex life, but they're afraid of rejection. They're afraid of being vulnerable, putting themselves out there. And
Mm.
so they just stay home and log on to porn, and then it can escalate. And this is where the escalation is a whole other topic, you know, where you see people getting into more and more extreme things because they need that in order to get it off.
Yeah, I get that, and I witnessed that. I think from being so young, the you know the conversations I had on Babe Station with the men, some of the things that the men would, you know, ask for or want to experience just through talking about it, which was, you know, I don't shame the men for it because, you know, it was an outlet for them to express the suppressed sexuality, but also just like, wow, like this there was just
Yeah.
so much. And it makes me just think, especially because of the industry, it now makes me think like, you know, just how much it does. I want to be careful with my words, but just how much it does control the masses, and how, you know, some of those things there can, yeah, create this disconnect in humanity, because ultimately humans are designed to connect with each other. We need human connection. We need intimacy. We need
Mm-hmm.
love. You know, this separation thing just isn't working anymore. And I believe as soon as we come into more communication, more connection, especially in relationships, there is more harmony, peace, and balance on earth, and less control, and less putting our money and putting ourselves into these situations, that are, you know, allowing us to be controlled even more. And so that's just opened up so much more for me, because I definitely was stuck in that kind of trap for a while.
Yeah. And again, it's an industry, you know,
Mm.
it's a money making
Yeah,
industry. It's like people think that apps are free, and it's like they're not free. They're preying on your attention and your eyeballs, and they sell your attention to advertisers. And porn is also not free. I mean, it's an industry that's making money off of your attention. And
absolutely.
there are, you know, billions and billions of dollars behind making it addictive. You know, they want you to be there.
They do. I'm so glad. I'm so glad we said this. I'm so glad that this is a brave enough conversation to have, because it is true, you know. And if, you know, we're blind to that, it's, you know, we've got to start waking up a little bit, you know, and start this new kind of process of to how we can start having more fulfilling lives. I mean, I know for me as a woman, it was very much performative. Um, you know, there was times where I was like, do I need to perform like
Mm,
this
mm,
to get the male's attention? Because then I am praised on what I've done right. And so then that confused me for being like, what do I like in the bedroom was sort of like just what I was praised on, not genuinely what I genuinely
mhm.
liked. So I thought I liked that with a man because he said I was good at that, or because he praised me on that. But it wasn't until like I started to stop watching porn and be more with myself that I realized, no, this is what I like. And some of it would match, and some of it was like, no, I truly was just doing that like to satisfy this thing and not truly liking it. It doesn't mean I won't ever like it in the future. It doesn't mean I won't ever do it. But it was that kind of praising of performance that was really noticeable, and I think that definitely came from porn. How would you say to men who are curious about, you know, shifting away from this? How would you say, for where would you get them to start?
Yeah. So the most important thing is to cultivate awareness of kind of the situation. You know, like there's no way you're going to break free from porn addiction or unwanted porn use unless you have a compelling reason why. If you don't want to, it'll never happen. If you're watching a lot of porn and you don't see any reason to quit, then you know you're not going to. And so one way is just to get clear on like, where is this leading you? And this was again a pivotal moment in my life when I had this kind of wake up call where I realized, hey, if I keep watching porn in this way, I'm going to be this creepy old man hitting on girls at, you know, college girls at bars. And I could see, not only that, I could see that all my relationships were going to be unsatisfying. I could see that I wasn't going to be in a stable relationship because porn was making me always want something novel, something new, because this is what porn does to us. And I could see that I was also screwing up my brain, my ability to focus and concentrate. I wasn't able to actually focus on my hobbies, my creativity, because I was always using porn as a procrastination tool. And so just getting clear on what I call the default future, which is if you don't make a change, where is this going to lead you 5 years or 10 years or 30 years down the line? And that's one wake up call. The other is to focus on like, what does your dream future look like? And every client that I do this with, I have them map out, you know, what is their dream life 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And for every single one, you know, porn has no place in their dream life. They don't want to be sitting huddled in a closet room, like hiding their behavior from their loved ones and their partners. When you think about the life you want to live, you know, porn just doesn't really play a role in it for 99% of people. So that's the first step, is just getting clear on, you know, do you want to quit? And then if you, you know, if you're like, hey, if you recognize the consequences and you recognize this is having an impact on my life and I need to stop. Then it's important to go to the root of the addiction, the root of the craving within you. Because the one mistake I see so many people making is they just think, if I can just stop myself from watching porn and just use willpower and just stop the behavior, then I'll be fixed. And it just doesn't work. You have to go to, what's the reason that you reached out to porn in the first place? Because one of my favorite authors in this space, Gabor Mate, he talks about how, the addiction isn't the problem. The addiction was the attempt to solve the problem. And so the addiction was the coping mechanism. Like, if you're addicted to alcohol or you're addicted to drugs or you're addicted to porn, these things are coping mechanisms to deal with some underlying pain that you're experiencing. Whether it's loneliness, isolation, stress, boredom, trauma, it can be anything. And so you have to go to the root. You have to start to heal yourself from within. And this is where meditation comes into play. Things like mindfulness, self-compassion, love and kindness, equanimity, self-mastery. There's so many things that you can cultivate from within that can heal you from addiction. And then the final thing is, like, what most men want is a life where they don't have to struggle with porn anymore. Where it's not like, okay, like gritting your teeth and white knuckling. They want a life where they can be in the presence of porn and it doesn't pull them in. They're just like, oh, I don't want that. That's what most men want. And so if you want that, you have to cultivate a fulfilling life, a life of deep fulfillment. And that is not about how many people you're sleeping with or how much money you have. It's about these other things that we don't get taught in school, but like practicing, gratitude, practicing compassion, being of service for people in your community, things that really fill your soul and fill your spirit. Because if you don't do that, you're going to feel empty inside. And so many people are using porn to fill the void and fill the emptiness.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like connection, isn't it? It's like when we think of how does connection make you feel? Connection is all those really beautiful things that we desire in life, like safety and love and fun and pleasure. And connection is like feeling free and relaxed. And actually, if you say to someone, what does connection make you feel? They're never going to say porn, money.
Yeah.
Porn, money, women, cars. That's not what connection is. When you ask someone, what does it feel like to be truly connected? It's none of them things.
Yeah.
And
that's, it's so important for people to realize that strategy, it's never going to bring you the happiness that you want. Like, having more sex with more attractive people isn't going to satisfy you because it's insatiable. Like it will never deeply satisfy you. You will always want something more. You always want something new. You always want more money.
Yeah.
And if you want to be fully satisfied, you have to go to other things, like connection.
Yeah. And I think meditation is great for connection, right? Because even if you can go into a meditation practice and just feel that word, just bring that word in, feel what that feels like in your body. Meditate on the word, meditate on what it means or feels to be connected, and you start to really learn the things that really you value in connection, and you start to feel the feeling, and it's happening within your body. It's filling you up. I do it as a practice every morning. I write connection down on a piece of paper and I meditate on it. And I'm like, sometimes I write trust down and I meditate on trust. Sometimes, it depends how I'm feeling. But right now I'm still on connection. I'm working with meditation and connection. And that is fulfilling me. It's fulfilling me from within, and it's helping me, teach others, but it's also helping me realize like what isn't making me feel truly connected, whether that's in my relationships, in my work, with my clients, maybe it's even social media or even food, when you can meditate on those feelings of that connection, we can start to pinpoint to what we're doing in life, where we're making decisions. And that doesn't feel like that connection I felt in meditation. Okay, well, is this something I want to proceed with? You know?
Yeah.
Just little things like that are like, just a few minutes in the morning.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why going on a meditation retreat is such an invaluable experience. I mean, when you can be on a retreat and have nothing, you literally give up all your possessions and there's no reading or writing or talking, and you're just sitting and meditating, doing walking meditation, maybe having a cup of tea. And when you can experience profound contentment, just sitting and having a cup of tea, and you realize that tastes better than kind of all the material things that you were chasing.
Yeah.
It's a profound experience because it shows you that the strategy that most people go about, trying to get happy just doesn't work.
Yeah. And it shows you it's possible to be fulfilled in the things that we don't think would fulfill us. It proves to us that this cup of tea is really fulfilling me, this tree that I am stood with. And meditation retreats, beautiful way to start to go inwards, for sure. And do you have anything else that you want to speak about whilst we're here? Anything you want to touch upon before I ask you about where we can find more of you and how you can help more men in this world?
Yeah. I think the one thing we haven't really talked about is just how important it is to practice being vulnerable for men. Because, for myself, even after I broke free from my porn addiction, it took me another 6 years to be able to open up about porn to anyone, because it's such a sensitive topic. It's so shameful that so many men don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to open up and be honest with someone about how they might have a struggle with it, let alone like if it's a huge struggle like an addiction. And so, if you can find a safe space to talk about it, whether it's a men's group or a coach or a therapist, but finding some way to express to another person like, hey, this is something that I'm struggling with, that is probably the most important first step, because it does two things. One is, you admit to yourself that you have a problem, and you take that step of saying, hey, I need help with this. But the thing that it does, maybe even more importantly, is that it kind of dismantles your shame around it. Because when you can tell someone the thing that you've been hiding in your closet and the thing that you've been so ashamed of, and you're like, I don't know if I can tell anyone, but you tell that to a person and you're met with compassion and understanding, it takes such a huge weight off your shoulders. And this is true for any problem. It's not just porn addiction, but porn addiction is one of those ones that's so sensitive. So I would say to anyone out there, just, find someone that you can confide in and that you can open up to and say, hey, I'm struggling with this.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And very important, extremely important. In fact, like literally you're opening that space. And I feel like when we express and we open that space to speak on a spiritual level as well, I believe that's when we are open to receive more love and guidance and healing and acceptance and all of that. When we decide to open our heart to it, it has profound effects. I know a lot of the women that come to me for the womb healing, we do a lot of healing around sexual experiences from past or even the first boyfriend that they ever held hands with, just holding hands with in the playground at school, or the dynamic of what was going on. 9 times out of 10, something happened when they were 6 in the playground with the boy that they fancied, and usually it involves other things. And the way that it plays out in their lives is astonishing. And the moment that a woman opens up to me and tells me that thing, she says, I have never told anybody this in my life. Like, I cannot believe these words are coming out of my mouth. It's almost like I see an energy. It's almost like something leaves their body, you know, like it's almost like that. If you would, if you were to say that this shameful, you know, hidden thing is almost like an entity that eats away at you inside, it's like it leaves when you express it and you are met with that compassion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that darkness then becomes this, you know, love, or this lighter energy. And that is one of the most amazing things that I see women do, is just that expression of feeling safe to express and not judged. I believe my work from my old job helps me able to hold women in that space quite well, because you can tell me anything. Like, I've seen loads, I've witnessed loads, like, and also men. Like, I don't judge you.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. I've been on the receiving
Yeah.
end. So it's a special place when, you know, people like you and people like me can give people the space, the capacity, the safety to set themselves free.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's similar for me. It's like one of the reasons that my clients trust me is because they know that I've been there. And, you know, I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I'm coming from a place of compassion. And that's very helpful because there's a lot of, you know, people in this field who are coming from a very religious kind of moralizing perspective of saying, okay, porn is sinful and you're a bad person if you watch it. And, you know, that just doesn't work for a lot of us. A lot of us have a more nuanced understanding, and we just say, well, it's not evil, but I might need to check my relationship with it because it might be affecting me. And so, yeah, it's important to, you know, that we have experience in this and people can trust us.
Yeah, exactly. And what an amazing thing to open up and just talk about and express. Even I feel like more liberated just having this conversation, you know, and just be like, you know what, it's all right. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't, if it lands with someone, it's going to land with someone. If someone wants to revisit this live and listen and connect, then maybe one day they'll come back to it. And that's when the time will be right for them.
Yeah. It might
just
plant a seed.
Yeah. Just planting the seed and having two people that can talk about it openly, you know, that have moved through these things is, you know, a great example that anyone who wants to move into it or perhaps face it, you got some living proof here.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, the last thing I'll say before we wrap up is just, you know, recovery is possible. Like, if you're out there struggling with porn addiction and you feel like you're broken, you're not. You know, like, you can recover, and all you need is the right system and the right support. Like, you need a program to follow, a path to follow, and you need to get accountability. So I guess, you know, that's, I can wrap up there and say, like, if you want accountability, check in with me, because that's what I offer.
So this is what I was going to ask. So where can perhaps, or what do you offer, like, you know, your expertise with helping men through this, you know?
Yeah. So right now, you know, I offer one-on-one coaching, and then there's also going to be a group coaching program coming up, you know, for people who are more interested in that communal group coaching offer. But also, you know, I have a podcast, and a lot of people find help from the podcast. You know, somebody I was talking to today on a call, they said they binged all 38 episodes in the last 2 days. And so it's, you know, it's really helpful for people to listen to if you're struggling with porn. I would say check out the podcast. It's called Unhooked.
Unhooked. Unhooked podcast. I'll add it on the information as well, on the caption, so people can check out the podcast. I think that's a great way to lean in as well, because they can get to know you, a bit more of how you work and your personality, and like you can really kind of feel that safety, can't you, and connection through podcasts a little bit more.
And it's anonymous. Like nobody knows what podcast you're listening to. And so
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about, like, some people don't want to follow me on Instagram because they don't want people thinking that they're a porn addict. And I get it, but um, yeah, you can listen to a podcast and, it's not social in terms of that social media. So it's a great place to tune in.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Definitely, definitely a great place to tune in for sure. Um, and then, just allowing people to contact you. And can they contact you via Instagram or email and things like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Send me a DM on Instagram. Send me a message through my contact on my website.
Yeah.
I love hearing from people.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if anybody does want to share anything via the DM, I probably will have some women drop in. Occasionally I get men actually say, I don't interact with you much, Grace, but I do listen. They say, I do you have helped me, a lot of men. And sometimes it's nice to hear that, because a lot of men do stay a lot more quiet than women when it comes to this stuff. And you don't know if it's reaching people. But I do get men that do say that. So it is nice to just give us a thumbs up if it was interesting.
Yeah, I would love that. Like, if you're listening to this, come to my page and just give me a thumbs up and say I heard you, on the live with Grace, and
yeah,
that would be fun.
Yeah, a thumbs up, and just allow yourself to give us that if you don't want to go into it deeper. But yeah, it's nice to know that people, have perhaps taken something from it or resonated in some kind of way.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've absolutely loved this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on and spending your time here and just sharing everything that you've been through. It's been really nice to connect with you, and I'm really glad that I contacted you now. It's just really great. So yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And we're gonna have to have you on the Unhooked podcast, because I think your story would be really, really nice for the audience.
Great. I would love that. Yeah, let me know. Definitely some juicy topics to dive into for sure, especially when it comes to porn in the sex industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. Are you doing anything nice this evening, or what time is it where you are now?
It is 9 o'clock in the evening. I just got back from the gym, so I'm gonna eat some food and then go to bed after this.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, same. Yeah. I've had back-to-back days, so food, bed, up again in the morning.
Yeah. Another day to hustle and grind.
Yeah, it's a couple of busy days, which is good, because I'm on a part of my cycle where I can, because I have the energy, so I fit it all in around my cycle, which is great. Yeah. So yeah. Well, I will catch up with you soon. Thank you for everyone who joined as well, and thank you for everyone who's going to re-listen and watch. And have a good night. Thanks. Good night.
Thanks. All right, bye everyone.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please help me to grow this community by selecting that subscribe button and liking and leaving a comment in the section below. And I'll see you next time.